the locks, yeah, you can always have that written into the IEP to have a certain type of lock, even a key lock, if the child has struggles with recalling, the lock combination, and, extra set of clothes if they forget their clothes in their locker due to attentional deficits or what have you, or again, changing out, you can change out in the nurse's office, or you can arrive, like I said, have it maybe first period or last period to prevent the number of times having to change out. We talked about accommodations for having to leave class early if they're going to take more time to transport between classes. But again, keeping in mind, they're going to miss that instruction, and 5 minutes can be a lot, especially if they're 50-minute periods, right? Or they may say, I saw someone mention this in the chat, something about lunchtime and what that looks like on middle school and high school campuses. That's a great question. And I definitely agree, looking at that, oftentimes you'll see the SDC classes go to lunch early to minimize the overwhelm, right? Oh, there's too much going on, so we go through the line first. Well, okay, but then they're missing the whole social piece. So you have it written into your kids' IEP that they're being exposed to their gen ed peers during lunch and assemblies and whatnot, but realistically they're not for the whole time because they're being let out 10 minutes early and they're sitting by themselves, and you know what I mean? So yes, what does that look like? Where does your class sit? Or do you allow your students and encourage your students to sit wherever they want, which is what should be happening? And if you don't want your child going 10 minutes early or 5 minutes early to avoid the chaos, then they shouldn't be doing that. They should be, you have those discussions. Like I said, it's an individualized plan. So you don't have to follow what every other kid in the class does just because that's been the norm for that class.
Other accommodations for kids with executive functioning issues might be mild to moderate prompting, structuring a learning environment for success, making sure that the student knows that the task is meaningful, so that the rationale is understood, so that the student has a better understanding, not just of what they're learning, but how and when they're being asked to show what they've learned. If students are excited about a project or an assignment, they're likely to exert more effort, even if their executive functioning skills require some support, which are teachers who are able to say, don't forget to do this, and show me that, and where is this, and how are you going to do the next step, or it's time for the next step.
Yeah, so again, it's a very broad spectrum. Of course, there's a variety of different needs that can present for any individual with CP. So, I mean, accommodations can be as minimal as, I'm trying to think of an example for someone who's not maybe too significantly impacted. Accommodations to support just maybe with accessibility on the campus. So ensuring maybe minimizing barriers in the classroom so that they can navigate the classroom without risk of falling or tripping on things, or even specialized writing utensils to support with fine motor. That can be something that can be impacted, to specialized feeding utensils to support with feeding. Those are examples of accommodations. There's so many examples that this is not an exhaustive list. Whereas if we get to students who may have more significant needs and they need services on an IEP, I would say the more common examples of services you would see are the ones you already listed, right? Like physical therapy. And again, physical therapy is only warranted educationally if it's impacting the student's ability to access their education. So I often see students with cerebral palsy who may be receiving private PT and don't necessarily qualify for educationally based PT, and that can be very confusing for families. So, whereas maybe your child would continue to benefit outside of the school setting, of course, to work on, strengthening and things like that. If they're, what school PTs look at is, are they able to access the campus? Are they able to safely navigate the campus? Are they a fall risk? Are they able to access their academics in class? And that can be OT and PT. PT would look more at things like navigating the room and making sure they're not falling or tripping again. Are there barriers and things? making sure they can go from seated to standing, right? Or vice versa, especially for younger kids who are still doing things like floor time. Making sure they can access the playground safely and that they're able to be a meaningful participant in recess. And again, once you're in middle school and high school, that's not as big of a factor because they don't really have playgrounds anymore. So you might start to see a change. But then the campuses are larger. So are they able to withstand, do they have the stamina and the endurance to ambulate from class to class? And are they able to do that? So those are things to consider for school-based PT. You may receive, of course, even more significant needs looking at things like, the stander and things like that, utilizing the low incidence equipment if it's needed, and PTs can support with that. You might need a specialized chair or desk within the classroom. And again, PTs can help recommend some of that.
Can we request accommodations for assessments? So, thinking about the receptive language point, like, can we request an advanced accommodations around those kinds of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for standardized assessments, they cannot be accommodated in any way. So the reason being, the whole point of it is to look at the gap, right? So we're looking at how this student is performing in whatever area we're talking about, let's say math, in comparison to same age peers to determine if there is a need. And so if we're giving them accommodations, then we're not able to see that true need. So for standardized assessments, which is pretty much the bulk of what you're going to be seeing in like a triennial or a psychoeducational evaluation, the answer would be no. However, you do need to ensure that the assessments that are being run make sense for that child. So kind of like Lindsay and I were talking about earlier, if it's a student who only communicates via AAC,
Yep.
then you have to ensure that the tests you're doing to look at their processing and their ability to do whatever the skills are, whether it's academic or cognitive, take into account that it's an assessment that's been proven to be valid and reliable for someone that uses AAC. So it wouldn't be an accommodation. It would just be something that's been standardized for that population, if that makes sense. I, of course, always advocate for observe, observe, observe. And there are many ways that can happen, right? Of course, we know as parents, if we're standing in our kids' classroom, that we may ourselves we very well may be impacting their behavior. And so we aren't likely to see the best, most valid representation of what's really going on. So if that isn't an option for you to go in and observe yourself, what I refer to as a blind observer is also a great alternative. So that means sending someone in that is going to know what to look for and is knowledgeable on the content matter or the subject, if you will. However, your child doesn't know them. So they won't know that they're there to observe them. They won't know who they are. So it's less likely, right, to impact your child and how they're performing. That's a couple ways. You can also consent to your school teams videotaping your child, particularly if you want to see a specific accommodation being utilized, right, or a specific goal being targeted. That's a great option that I think more and more school teams are even recommending now themselves, and I think it's really helpful. So, for example, if there's a certain goal you want to see, and you're asking the team, well, what does this look like, or how are you working on this with my child? You can give them, authorization or consent to video record themselves working with your child to see what that looks like, and that can include, like you're asking, accommodations, right? So what accommodations are being implemented? And if you have questions about a specific accommodation, same thing. You can ask, can you record my child, when they're using the specialized eating utensils or the suction cup bowl? Can you record that so I can see what it looks like when they're eating, for example? That's something that can be easily done.
So what are the top accommodations or modifications that are essential for your child's success in that classroom?
Yeah, for our kids specifically, a lot of visuals because they are visual learners. So we definitely have to put it into our accommodations and modifications that we needed visuals. We have a behavior intervention plan. So with the behavior intervention plan, we have different strategies like the first DEN, strategy, choices, extended time, breaking down the material, also shorter, like you said, Karen, maybe 3 sentences, they are writing a whole paragraph, those kind of accommodations, and obviously the aid that we already requested from the beginning. So those are the most relevant.
Visuals has always been there, and also having access to different kinds of like audio books, but also modified texts, right? He can read, and but it's not fast enough for him to keep up with the class, right? So we all very often, when he's doing a book with the class, he will have like 3 other kinds of books. He'll watch the movie, he'll listen to the original text, and he'll also have a modified text that we've got from online, right? And then clicker, that's been really important. He's still not writing expressively, so for a long time we had a scribe as the accommodation, but that hasn't been that good because it doesn't encourage him to write or to formulate how to express. So we've been really trying to work with Clicker, which is a program that helps you write.
Is that assistive technology? Is that
yes,
part of
it is.
AT? Okay,
yes. And I would recommend anyone to have an AT evaluation just to see what there's out there that can help, like text-to-speak programs. But having it read aloud is really good, and just involving them in the technology. I wish we'd done more than that, because suddenly we needed the technology like anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those things, I think, just having like a sense of like he needs extra support to access the material, and then he also needs a different way to show what he knows, because he can't write an essay. Finally we've got him to a point where he's fairly good at doing bubbles on a on a quiz, right? But even that, like,
Magnus, I'm not good at that.
We have mastered the bubbles on the quiz now. We're good.
So much of what you just said is so important. Karen and Sherry said something in the chat that aligned exactly with what you just said, which is one thing to keep in mind when kids are doing projects is what's the goal of the assignment? And if it's not writing, allow them to dictate. And I tell you, and I probably said this before a million times, like, Lena was always required to write her name at the type of, and she can. It's frustrating. It's hard. And guess what? It was like, she doesn't want to do her math assignments. And then, we had to try to boil down to like what was going on. It's like, oh, she hates math, which she doesn't love math. But besides that, it's because it was starting, and it's like, and then you have to write the numbers, and she couldn't concentrate on the math because she was having to write it. So it's really also digging in and figuring out what accommodations are appropriate. And sometimes, you give some somewhere and you realize the problem is something else. And it's really, again, listening to that child, and then like one of our hats and, your whole team, it's kind of a mystery, like, really figuring out what it is.
Exactly what Sherry said, right? What's the goal of the project, right? Because if you're trying to teach her how to write her name, you need her to write her name. If you just want her name on the sheet, give her a stamp with her name on, and she can stamp it on everything, right?